State of New York versus Karen Andre.
Ready, Runner.
Ready, Your Honor.
The clerk will draw a jury.
You are the panel from which jury selected to try this case. 12 names will be drawn. As I draw your name, please answer President and step up here. Take your place and wait for further instructions from Judge Daphne B. Wanda Vanderlinder, Mary Vanderlinder, Joan McAdit, Becky Altemeyer, Pam May, Bill Mash, Mike Schmaltz, Linda Taylor, David J. Sparks, Dennis E. Smith, Wayne Johnson, and John Doty. Jurors, please rise. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear to well and fairly try this case and render the true verdict, so help you God? Say I do.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are the jurors who will try this case. At its close, you will retire to the jury room and vote upon your verdict. I instruct you to listen to the testimony carefully and to pronounce your judgment to the best knowledge of your hearts and minds. You are to determine whether Karen Andre is guilty or not guilty of the murder of Bjorn Faulkner, and her fate rests in your hands. The district attorney may proceed.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, on the night of January 16th, the body of a man came hurling through space and crashed, a disfigured mass, at the foot of the Faulkner building. He was thrown or leaped from the roof of his luxurious penthouse. The defense will claim that it was suicide, that this great man was unwilling to bend before his creditors and acknowledge his ruin, that he found the fall from the roof of the world's tallest building shorter and easier than the descent from the throne of the world's financial dictator. A few months ago, behind every big financial transaction in the world, stood this well-known figure, with kingdoms and nations in one hand and a whip in the other. Why then should he commit suicide? No one suspected that a gigantic swindle lay at the foundation of Faulkner Enterprises. No one suspected that the entire business world was in danger of a heart attack. Yet, a few days after his death, the earth shook from the crash of his business. Thousands of investors were stricken with paralysis the moment that monstrous heart stopped beating. There were two women who ruled his life. Here is one of them, Karen Andre, his efficient secretary and notorious fellow swindler. But there was another whom fate had sent him for salvation. This was the lovely girl, Nancy Lee Faulkner, who is now his widow, and is the only daughter of John Graham Whitfield, our great philanthropist. Faulkner thought he had found a new life in the innocence of his young bride. He was going to start over. And the best proof we have of this is that 2 weeks after his wedding, he dismissed his secretary, Karen Andre. He was through with her. But one is not easily through with a woman like Karen Andre. We can only guess what hatred and revenge smoldered in her heart. No, Bjorn Faulkner did not kill himself. He was murdered, and the state contends that he was murdered by the woman you see before you, Karen Andre. That on the night of January 16th, she took her revenge. That, ladies and gentlemen, is what we are to prove. Our first witness will be Dr. Kirkland. Dr. Kirkland? solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the true self you got?
I do.
Kindly state your name
Thomas Kirkland.
and your occupation.
I'm the medical examiner of this county.
In the course of your duty, what were you called upon to do on the night of January 16th?
I was called to examine the body of Bjorn Faulkner.
You found the body greatly mangled by a fall.
Yes.
Was that all?
No, a closer examination of the body revealed a bullet wound between the fourth and fifth interspace in the region of the heart.
What could you establish as the cause of death?
It was impossible to determine. It could have been the wound or the fall.
In your opinion, could a .32 caliber bullet have caused that wound?
Yes, it could.
How long had Faulkner been dead when you reached the body?
I reached the body about a half an hour after the fall.
Could you say how long it had been dead?
No, I could not.
Judging by the condition of the body, could it have been dead over a half an hour?
Yes.
So then it could have been dead before he was thrown from the penthouse.
Yes.
That is all. Your witness.
You said that Mr. Faulkner could have been shot and died before he fell from the penthouse.
Yes.
But can you state positively that he died as a result of the bullet wound?
No, owing to the condition of the body, it was impossible to determine.
Is it possible that he was conscious and able to move after he was wounded?
It is possible.
So he could have shot himself and then leaped from the building.
He could, yes, but
That's all.
Witness may leave the stand.
This is John Hutchins. This is John Hutchins. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the true self you got?
I do.
What is your name
Mrs. John Joseph Hutchins.
and your occupation?
I ain't got an occupation. I'm just wife of my husband.
And what does your husband do?
He's the night janitor at the Faulkner building, ma'am.
And does Mr. Faulkner have business offices in that building?
Yes, ma'am.
And does he own the penthouse on the roof of that building?
Yes, ma'am.
And who lives there?
Mr. Faulkner did. That is, before he got married.
And after his marriage?
After his marriage, Miss Andre lived there all by herself.
Did you ever see Mr. Faulkner calling on Miss Andre after his marriage?
Yes, ma'am, one time.
And that was?
On the night of January 16th.
Tell us about it, Mrs. Hutchins.
Well, it was about 10:30.
Wait a minute. How did you know the time?
Well, my husband always goes to work every night at 10 o'clock.
Why didn't your husband go to work on that night?
Well, for the past year or two now, my husband don't seem to have no more gumption. And when he don't, I take his place.
Oh. So on the night of January 16th, your husband was low on gumption?
Yes, ma'am. And it was about 30 minutes after I goes to work that the doorbell to the private entrance rung. I went there and answered the door. It was Miss Andre, and Mr. Faulkner was with her. I was surprised, because Miss Andre has her own key, and most times she just opens the door herself.
Was Miss Andre alone with Mr. Faulkner?
No, ma'am. There was two gentlemen with them.
Who were they?
I don't know, ma'am.
Had you ever seen them before?
No, ma'am, never.
What did they look like?
Well, they was tall and sort of skinny, both of them. One of them had his hat out crooked over his eyes and his coat collar turned up. He had been drinking.
How do you know that?
Well, Mr. Faulkner and the other gentleman had to help him into the elevator. His feet was so loose.
Did Mr. Faulkner seem worried that evening?
No, ma'am, he seemed powerful happy.
Did he seem as if he were a man contemplating self-destruction?
Huh?
I mean, did he look like he was going to kill himself?
No, ma'am. Leslie died laughing.
We object, Your Honor.
Objection sustained.
Now, what I gone and done?
Nothing at all. Just answer the questions. Did the other members of the party seem happy?
Yes, ma'am. They was all laughing when they got in the elevator. Except in the drunk one.
Did you see any members of the party leave that night?
Yes, ma'am. The first one came down about 15 minutes later.
Who was that?
It was the drunk one. He came down the elevator all by himself. He didn't seem quite so drunk no more. He could walk, but he staggered a little. I wanted to help him door, see the condition he was in, but he noticed me coming and he hurried right out.
Did you see where he went?
Yes, ma'am. He got into a gray coupe parked right outside the entrance, and he drove away fast. But the cops must have got him.
What makes you think that?
Well, I noticed the car that started right after him.
What car?
The defendant will please keep quiet.
If Miss Andre will let me do the questioning, I may satisfy her curiosity. I was just going to ask, what car, Mrs. Hutchins?
It was a big black one, SUV, and I reckon. It was parked 2 cars away from the first one.
How many were in it?
I just saw one man.
What makes you think he was after the first one?
Well, it seems sort of funny that they saw me together like that.
Did you see the other stranger leave that night?
Yes, ma'am. He left about 10 minutes later.
Do you see where he went?
Yes, ma'am. He got into a big black car, too. And he just went right out.
That's all, Mrs. Hutchins.
No, ma'am, there's more.
More what?
Well, about 30 minutes after I goes back to work, I heard some screaming outside. Then I saw Miss Andre. She was running out of that private entrance as fast as she could. So I went chasing after her because that's the kind of person I am. And then we pushed through the crowds, and there we saw Mr. Faulkner lying on the sidewalk, all mashed to pieces.
Did you follow them up into the penthouse for questioning?
No, ma'am. When they started to leave, they shut the door.
Then you really don't know anymore, do you, Miss Andre?
No, ma'am. Guess I don't.
That's all.
Just a moment. You said that you had never seen Faulkner calling on Miss Andre after his marriage, with the exception of that night. Now tell me, do you always see every visitor who comes in the building at night?
No, sir. If the guest has his own key to the private entrance, he can come and go as he pleases, and I wouldn't even see him.
In other words, Mr. Faulkner could have called on Miss Andre any number of times, and you would not have seen him come in.
Well, no, sir. I don't spy on people. Whatever they does, I leaves it at that.
That is all.
You may leave the chair now.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Palmer Van Fleet.
More Van Fleet. Do you solemnly swear?
I do.
What is your name?
Homer Herbert Van Fleet,
And your occupation?
private investigator,
What was your last assignment?
shadowing Mr. Bjorn Faulkner
By whom were you hired to do it?
by Mrs. Bjorn Faulkner.
And were you shadowing Mr. Faulkner on the night of January 16th?
I was.
Tell us about it.
I start at 6:13 p.m. Mr. Faulkner leaves home, Long Island, wears formal dress suit, drives roadster himself, alone. Unusual speed all the way to New York.
Where did Mr. Faulkner go?
He drives up to the Faulkner building and goes in. I wait outside in my car. 9:35 p.m., Mr. Faulkner and Miss Andre come out. Miss Andre is wearing a corsage of orchids of unusual proportions. They drive away.
Where did they go?
No one's perfect in this world.
What do you mean?
I lost track of him.
What?
Due to Mr. Faulkner's speed, And an accident.
What accident?
My left fender crashing into a truck. Damages to which were charged to Mrs. Faulkner.
What did you do after you lost track of them?
I returned to the Faulkner building and waited.
When did they return?
10:30 p.m. exactly. A gray coupe follows them. Mr. Faulkner gets out and helps Miss Andre, and while Miss Andre rings the bell, Mr. Faulkner opens the door of the gray coupe. A handsome gentleman in formal dress clothes gets out, and together they help out a third gentleman, the latter wearing a gray overcoat. This gentleman shows signs of inebriation.
What did you do?
I go into Gary's grill. I must explain that I always allow myself time to take nourishment every 4 hours while on duty. Then I sat at the window and watched the door of the Faulkner building.
What did you observe?
Nothing. For 15 minutes. Then the man in the gray overcoat, the tipsy one, comes out. He gets into a car, the gray coupe. He's obviously in a hurry and he drives away south.
Did you see the other stranger leave?
The handsome guy? Yeah, about 10 minutes later. He gets into a car parked at the curb and he drives away south.
And that left Mr. Faulkner and Miss Andre up in the penthouse alone.
Yeah. I wait. As you say, Mr. Faulkner's alone with Miss Andre in the penthouse, and I'm curious. Professional. So I go up to the nightclub on the roof of Brooks building. There's an open gallery off the dining room, and you can see the Faulkner penthouse clear as day. I go out.
Then what?
I look.
Then what?
I yell.
What did you see?
No lights. Karen Andre's white gown shimmering in the moonlight. A man in evening clothes, Faulkner, leaning against the parapet. She pushes him with all her strength and he goes over the parapet down into space.
What did you do?
I go back into the dining room and yell about what I've seen. A crowd follows me down to the front of the Faulkner building. We find the bloody mess on the pavement with Miss Andre sobbing over it, fit to kill.
Your witness.
Can you kindly tell us, Mr. Van Fleet, when you started in the employ of Mrs. Faulkner?
October 13th last.
And can you tell us the date of Mr. and Mrs. Faulkner's wedding?
October 12th, the day before.
Exactly, just the day before. In other words, Mrs. Faulkner hired you to spy her husband the day after their marriage?
So it seems.
What were her instructions given to you?
To watch and report in detail every move and action of Mr. Faulkner.
Had Mr. Faulkner been calling on Miss Andre after his wedding?
I don't know. He went to the Faulkner building every day. He may have went up to his office, or he may have went to the penthouse. Or Miss Andre may have came down to his office. I don't know what's customary.
Did you report that to Mrs. Faulkner?
I did.
Did she seem worried?
I don't believe so. Mr. Faulkner was the most devoted of husbands, and he loved his wife dearly.
Just how do you know that?
Those are Mrs. Faulkner's own words.
Now, Van Fleet, tell us exactly what time you started up in the nightclub atop of the Brooks building on the evening of January 16th?
At 11:32 exactly.
And how long of a walk is it from the Faulkner building to the Brooks building?
Oh, about 3 minutes.
And what time was it when you came out on the balcony of the club?
At 11:57.
So it took you exactly 25 minutes to get out on the balcony. What were you doing the rest of the time?
Well, they have dancing at the club, and other things.
Did you partake of the other things?
I had a couple of drinks, if I get the drift of your curiosity, but you can't say I was intoxicated.
I have said nothing of the kind as yet. Now, you said you saw Miss Andre pushing Mr. Faulkner off the roof, and it was a little distance away in the darkness. And you were, well, shall we say, just had a couple of drinks.
The drinks had nothing to do with it.
Are you quite certain she was pushing him? Isn't it possible she was struggling with him?
Well, it's a funny way of struggling.
Mr. Van Fleet, what were Mrs. Faulkner's instructions to you before you came here to testify today?
Mrs. Faulkner has not been here to instruct me. As everybody knows, her and her father disappeared some short time after the Faulkner death, and have not been heard from since.
Have you heard from them since?
I have no record of it.
That is all.
Wait a moment, Mr. Stevens.
Yes, Miss Andre? What kind of a car do you drive, Mr. Van Fleet?
A brown coupe. Old, but serviceable.
Did you see any man following the man in the gray overcoat drive away on the night of January 16th?
I cannot recall. The traffic was quite heavy.
That's all.
May we stand? Elmer Street.
Elmer, sweetie. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Your name
Elmer Sweeney,
and your occupation?
policeman. I've been in the service just a year now, and over that time I
Yes.
fought a recruit.
But on the night of January 16th, were you at the scene of Bjorn Faulkner's death?
Yeah, I was right there when it happened. I stepped up and took care
Well,
of everything.
did you question Miss Andre?
No, not right away. Before I could do anything, that fellow Van Fleet stepped up to me and said how he had saw Karen Andre push Faulkner off the roof.
How did Miss Andre react to that?
She started laughing. I thought she'd went crazy.
What did you do?
Well, I took her up in the elevator with us.
Did you find anything unusual?
I say I did. When the doors opened, it was like a country. There was grass and trees this big around, and a sandy beach, just like Coney Island.
What was the first thing you did?
I turned on the shower.
Why did you do that?
Well, I had heard that when Mr. Faulkner lived there, he bathed in line, and I wanted to see if it was true.
Was it true?
Well, if it was, the service had been discontinued.
Did you find anything connected with Mr. Faulkner's death?
Oh, that, yes I did. The moment I walked in, it was in the drawing room, a letter.
Where was it?
It was propped up on the center table.
What? Mrs. Faulkner. Your Honor, this is a witness I've been trying to locate.
Very well.
We searched everywhere for you, Mrs. Faulkner. We went to California for a quiet rest. But I read in the papers that you wanted to call me as a witness, so Father brought me here by airplane. I wanted to do the duty toward the memory of my husband.
If there's anything we can do to assist you, Miss Flynn, we're at your disposal.
I can only express my deepest appreciation. If you'll kindly take seats, I'll be ready for you in just a little while. No, sit over here.
We object, Your Honor. This is an attempt to influence the jury, to make them face Mr. Faulkner's widow throughout the trial.
The defense counsel has no right to dictate where I seek my witnesses.
Silence. I shall allow it. Objection overruled.
Just a moment ago, you stated that you found the letter.
Yes, in the drawing room.
Exhibit A. Is this the letter that you found?
Oh, yes, the very same. How'd you get it?
Please read it to the jury.
If any future historian wants to record my last advice to humanity, I'll say that I found only two valuable things on this earth: my whip over the world and Karen Andre. To those who can use it, it's worth the advice is worth what it costs mankind. Bjorn Faulkner.
Submitted as evidence.
Accepted as Exhibit A.
Did you find anything else unusual?
Yes, I did. I found a gun. It was about that long, and it...
I will now show you a .32 caliber pistol. Is this the weapon that you found?
Well, yes, the very same. So you got a hold of that, too.
Submitted as evidence.
Accepted as Exhibit B.
And where did you find it?
It was out on the roof garden under a chair. I picked it up with my handkerchief because I'm always careful to watch for fingerprints, and I could tell it had just been fired because of the strong smell of powder.
Did you ask Miss Andre whose gun it was?
Yeah, she said it was hers.
And how did she explain the shot?
Well, she said that Faulkner had been depressed and wrote the letter and put it on the table, then ordered her not to touch it. Then he went to grab the gun. When she saw what he was about to do, she said that she struggled with him, and in the struggle, Faulkner was shot in the chest.
She stated that the gun was in Faulkner's hands when it went off.
Yes, she did.
Was she positive about that?
She said it 3 times.
Was the gun examined for fingerprints?
Yes, here are the photos.
police able to identify them?
Yes, they were exactly like these.
And whose are these?
Karen Andre's.
Were any other fingerprints discovered on the gun?
Not a one.
Submitted as evidence.
Accepted as Exhibit C and D.
Now, after the gun went off in Faulkner's hands, what happened next, according to Miss Andre?
Well, she said that Faulkner dropped the gun and yelled that she couldn't stop him. And before she knew it, he leaped off the roof.
Did you ask her who had been with him that night?
Yes, she said she was with two gentlemen who were friends of Faulkner, but she had met the first time that evening at dinner with Faulkner.
She stated that she had never met these two men before.
Yes, she did.
Was she very emphatic about that?
Yes, ma'am. I couldn't shake her.
That's all.
Miss Andre told you that she had struggled with Faulkner to prevent his suicide. Did you notice any evidence of a struggle in her clothes?
Well, yes. She was wearing a dress with diamond straps on it. One of the straps was ripped off, and she had to hold up her dress with one hand. I was really embarrassed.
That's all.
The witness may leave the stand.
Jane Chandler. Jane Chandler? Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Your name
Jane Chandler,
and your occupation.
handwriting expert of the New York Police Department.
Exhibit A. Please, do you recognize this letter?
Yes, I understand it's a letter found in Mr. Faulkner's penthouse the night of his death. I was called upon to examine it.
And what were you asked to determine?
I was asked to determine whether it was written by Mr. Faulkner.
And what is your verdict?
Certain peculiarities in the handwriting led me to the conclusion that that letter was forged.
Thank you, Miss Chandler. Your witness.
Miss Chandler, it was called to your attention during the inquest that Miss Andre was in the habit of signing unimportant documents with Faulkner's name when she was employed as his secretary. Now, have you compared Miss Andre's signature with Faulkner's real one?
I have.
And what is your opinion of it?
I compliment Miss Andre on her art. The difference is very slight.
Bearing that in mind, isn't it impossible to tell the difference between Faulkner's real handwriting and Miss Andre's imitation?
We have means of determining the differences.
What are the means?
One is the microscope, which reveals certain shadings and certain vibrations of the pen, which cannot be imitated.
How often are you handwriting experts wrong in your decisions?
We object, Your Honor.
If Your Honor, please, this is a perfectly legitimate question. I wish to prove that this is not an exact science.
Your Honor, this has been accepted in all courts for a number of years as an exact science, and if this lawyer doesn't know that...
Counsel, I will sustain the objection.
Miss Chandler, in view of the similarity of the writing, isn't there a reasonable doubt that this letter was a forgery?
Of course, there can be a doubt, but...
That's all.
Thank you.
Nancy Lee Faulkner. Nancy Lee Faulkner. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Kindly state your name.
Nancy Lee Faulkner.
And what relation were you to the late Bjorn Faulkner?
I was his wife
When did you first meet Mr. Faulkner?
in August of last year
And where did you meet him?
at a ball given by my friend in Newport.
You've heard Mr. Faulkner spoken of as the most ruthless of men. Did you find him so upon your first meeting?
No, not at all. He was perfectly charming and considerate. You see, he told me later, I was the first woman he'd ever met whom he could respect.
see him again after that?
Yes, about 3 weeks later, I invited him to an informal little dinner at my Long Island residence. With Daddy present, of course.
And did you see him often after that meeting?
Yes. His visits became more and more frequent until the day.
Until the day.
The day he proposed to me!
Please continue.
We went driving on a lonely little road. This Mr. Faulkner and I. I'm so sorry. It's hard for me to think of those things. Then he grabbed my hand, and he looked straight at me. He said, I love you, Nancy.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Faulkner. If you wish to be dismissed now and continue tomorrow,
Why, this is subterfuge. This is staged to gain the sympathy of the jury.
I object to that remark.
Why demand a fair trial for my client?
And you can demand what you like. There will be no interference with my witnesses.
Order, counsel. The jury will ignore these remarks.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Faulkner, for these interruptions. Please proceed.
Well, then he told me the truth about his money. That it was gone. He said he could not ask me to marry him because he had nothing to offer me. But I loved him. I told him his money meant nothing to me.
Did Mr. Faulkner seem hopeless about the future?
No, not at all. I told him it was our duty to save his enterprises, our duty to the widows and orphans who entrusted their funds in him. He said that my faith in him was like a great driving force propelling him onward, and he could not fail. How could he think of suicide?
Did you remain in New York after your wedding?
Yes. We lived on my Long Island residence, and he gave up his New York penthouse.
Did he ever mention anything to you about Miss Andre?
No, not then. But 2 weeks after our marriage, he came to me and said, Dearest, I feel I must tell you about my secretary who has served me so long. I told him he didn't have to if he didn't want to, but he said that he must, that his marriage to me had become a sacred trove that had regenerated his soul, and that past could have no part in it. He said that Karen Andre was the cause and symbol of his darkest years, and that he was going to dismiss her.
What did you answer?
Well, I told him we must not be cruel. Perhaps he could find another position for Miss Andre. He said that he would provide for her financially, but that he never wanted to see her again.
Tell me, what did Mr. Faulkner do on the day of January 16th?
He spent it in town on business as usual. He came home late in the afternoon. He said he had to dine with 3 friends and that it was a business deal, so he did not have dinner at home. He left about 6 o'clock.
Who were the 3 friends?
He did not tell me, and I did not ask. I made a point never to interfere with his business.
Did you notice anything peculiar that night when he said goodbye to you?
No, not at all. He kissed me goodbye and told me he'd try and be home early. I stood there and watched him drive away, thinking what a perfect dream our love had been. A beautiful, uplifting relationship that had just regenerated our souls. How could I know that this love through jealousy would bring about his death?
Your Honor, we object. We move that be stricken out.
The witness last sentence may go out.
Thank you, Mrs. Faulkner. That's all.
Will you be able to answer a few questions now, Mrs. Faulkner?
As many as you wish, Mr. Stevens.
You said your romance was like a perfect dream, didn't you?
Yes.
A sacred trope that regenerated a soul. A
Yes.
beautiful, uplifting relationship based on mutual trust.
Yes.
Then why did you hire a detective to spy on your husband the day after your wedding?
I didn't hire a detective to spy on my husband. I hired a detective to protect Mr. Faulkner.
Protect him? We kindly explain that.
Well, you see, some time ago, he was threatened by gangster Larry Reagan, but he chose to ignore it. But I was worried, so I hired Mr. Van Fleet to watch him. I did it in secret because I knew that Mr. Faulkner would object.
How could a detective, following at a distance, protect Mr. Faulkner?
Well, I didn't think the underworld would dare attack a man who was constantly watched.
So all Mr. Van Fleet had to do was watch Mr. Faulkner?
Yes.
Mr. Faulkner alone?
Yes.
Not Mr. Faulkner and Miss Andre?
Mr. Stevens, that supposition is insulting to me.
I haven't noticed you sparing insults today, Mrs. Faulkner.
I'm sorry, Mr. Stevens. I can assure you I intend to no such thing.
You said that Mr. Faulkner told you he never wanted to see Miss Andre again after your wedding.
Yes.
Then how do you explain the fact, after your wedding, he gave her his penthouse? the most luxurious apartment in New York City.
I can't explain it. How can I know what blackmail she was holding over his head?
Then how do you explain the fact that he lied to you about dining with 3 friends that night and instead went directly to Miss Andre's house?
Mr. Stevens, if I could explain that, I would save you the bother of this trial. We would all know who killed my husband. All I know is that for some reason, she had him come over to her house. Some reason which he could not tell me, his wife, and that he was found dead later that night.
That is all.
Your Honor, I want to ask a question.
Granted.
You love Avon Faulkner?
I did, Miss Andre.
Then how can you sit up there and say the things you did? Don't you know why he married you? Your Honor, please. How can you sit up there and lie about him? Because he can't come back and defend himself?
Your Honor, why should I be questioned by the woman who murdered my husband?
Mrs. Faulkner,
What is it?
one of us is lying. And we both know which one.
Court will now adjourn until 10 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Number 9 in the state of North Carolina, Judge Jacqueline Heath presiding.
The people of the state of New York versus Karen Andre.
Ready, Your Honor.
Ready, Your Honor.
The district attorney may proceed.
Maggie Swenson.
Magnus Benson.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
That's fair.
What is your name?
You know it. You just call me.
Kindly answer my questions without argument. State your name.
Magda Svensson.
And what country did you come from?
A Swede never comes from any country but Sweden.
What is your occupation?
I've been housekeeper.
By whom were you last employed?
By Hermione Faulkner, and before that by his father.
How long were you employed by them?
I've been in the family 38 years. I remember Hermione since he was a little kid.
When did you first come to America?
I've been here 5 years.
What were the duties Mr. Faulkner assigned to you?
I keep penthouse for him. I stay, even after he go. Then he get married and give penthouse to her. But I never employed by that one.
Now, Mrs. Svensson...
Miss Svensson?
Pardon me. Miss Svensson.
That's all right.
What did you know about Faulkner's connections with Miss Andre?
Decent woman like me should not know about such things. But sin is shameless in this world.
Tell us about it.
From where I first did this woman come, she tried to get her claws on Herr Faulkner. It is not good thing when secretary forgets to secretary.
Was she in love with Faulkner?
Only the heart can love. She have no heart. No, she ought to know too much about Herr Faulkner's business.
Was Faulkner in love with her?
He was married to other women. A good man never loves double.
Then why did he insist on keeping her after his marriage?
By the time he found out, she already had her claws on him, and she'd make him spend much money on her. Oh, to count up all the money he based on that woman.
Can you give any instances of his extravagance?
I can so. He had a platinum gown made for her. Yes, I said platinum. Fine mesh, fine, soft as silk. And she wore it on her naked body. She had a fire in the fireplace, and she heated the dress. She asked me to put it on her as hot as she could stand, and if it burned her shameless skin, she laughed like pagan she is, and say it was man kissing her vile like tiger.
We object, Your Honor.
These are the facts pertaining to the vital questions of this case.
But, Your Honor.
Silence. I shall ask the witness to word her testimony more modestly.
Sin is sin, Judge, any name you call it.
How did Mr. Faulkner act at the time of his marriage to Miss Whitfield?
He was happy for the first time in his life, like decent men, but found right road.
Did you know of anything in those days that might cause him to worry, to contemplate suicide?
No, nothing.
What was Miss Andre's attitude toward the other woman?
She's silent like stone sphinx. I hear her crying one night after marriage, crying, sobbing. But that first only time in her life.
Why was she crying?
I not know. All women cry sometime. Yes, to cry.
Was she crying because she had lost Faulkner?
No, not her. If she lose one man, she find another. I seen her kissing another man same night at her Faulkner's wedding.
Who's that?
I not know him.
You say you see Miss Andre kissing another man the night of his wedding. Tell us about that.
I got to wedding. It was beautiful. My poor Herbie Yarn's so handsome, and the young bride all white and lovely as Lily. I cried like looking at my own children. But she not go to wedding.
Well, did Miss Andre stay at home?
She stay home. I come home from wedding early. I come in service store. She not here. She was home all right, but she was not alone.
Who was with her?
He was, the man out on the roof in the garden. I see them. He take her hand and kiss her, the sinner.
And then?
And then she step back and say something. I not hear. She speak very soft. He just take her hand and hold it so long, I get tired waiting and go back to my room.
Did you see the man leave?
No, it's not.
Did you see him again?
Yes, once.
And that was?
The night of January 16th.
Tell us about that, please.
She very strange that day. She told me I have rest of day off, and I been suspicious.
Why did that make you suspicious?
It was Wednesday, and my day off was Thursday, and I not need second day, but she said she not leave me. So I go.
What time did you go?
About 4 o'clock. But I bought no secret. I came back.
When did you come back?
About 10 o'clock. The house dark. She not home. So I wait. Half hour after, I hear them come. I see her Faulkner with her, so I afraid to stay. But before I go, I see 2 gentlemen with them. One gentleman, oh, he drunk.
Did you see him leave?
No, I did not.
And did you see the other gentleman leave?
The other one, he's the man I see kissing Miss Andre night at her Faulkner's wedding.
Tell us about it.
I saw them out on the roof kissing, and they were kissing on the roof, and he held her hand and he kissed her.
That's all, Miss Vincent.
Thank you.
Just a minute, Miss Simpson. You stopped to have a little talk with me.
For that, I say all I know.
You may know the answers to a few more questions. For instance, you stated that you saw the man having relations with Miss Andre,
Yes, I did so.
but you also stated you could not hear what was said. Now remember, you're under oath. If you couldn't hear what was said, then you can't really swear they did anything at all, now can you?
No, but I can swear that he didn't either.
Can you really swear you saw the man kissing her?
With my own 2 eyes, I saw the sinner do it.
Well, after all, what's so wrong about a boy kissing a girl?
Listen, mister, maybe you don't know, and maybe you're too young to be experienced, but I know that a kiss is the door in heaven before a girl falls into sin.
Let's confine ourselves to this case. Now, when you saw the man for the first time, it was dark.
Yes, it was dark.
And on the night of January 16th, when you were so ingeniously spying on your mistress and saw her enter with Mr. Faulkner and heard you depart in order not to be caught. Am I correct?
You have good memory.
You just had a swift glance at the 2 gentlemen that entered with her.
Yes.
Could you tell us what the drunken gentleman looked like?
How can I? No time to notice face and too dark a door.
So, it was too dark to recognize the drunken gentleman, But you recognize the man you'd only seen once before?
Let me tell you, mister, I'm under oath, as you say, and I'm a religious woman, and I respect oath. If I say I'm the same man, I say it again. What do you think? I know nothing about men.
That is all, Miss Vincent.
Merely the sand, Miss Simpson.
Your Honor, please, the prosecution has one more witness to introduce, Mr. John Graham Whitfield. Mr. John Graham Whitfield. Do you solemnly swear to tell truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the true self you God?
I do.
What is your name?
John Graham Whitfield.
And what is your occupation, or rather your business?
Whitfield National Bank.
It is obvious, Mr. Whitfield, that you are well qualified to pass judgment upon financial matters. Can you tell us the state of Mr. Faulkner's finances immediately preceding his death?
I should say it was desperate, but not hopeless. My bank made a loan of $25 million in an effort to help Mr. Faulkner save his enterprises. Needless to say, the money is lost.
What prompted you to make that loan?
He was the husband of my only daughter. Her happiness has always been paramount to me, but my motives were not entirely personal. Realizing the countless tragedies the small investors who crash would bring, I felt it my duty to make every possible effort to prevent it.
Would you have risked such a considerable sum of money in Faulkner Enterprises if you believed them hopelessly destined to crash?
Certainly not. It was a difficult undertaking, but I felt the crash could have been prevented had Faulkner lived.
So as far as his business affairs were concerned, Mr. Faulkner had no reason to commit suicide.
He had every reason for remaining alive.
Now, Mr. Whitfield, can you answer me this? Was he happy in his personal life, in his relations with your daughter?
Miss Flynn, I would like to state that I have always regarded the home and the family as most sacred institutions in our lives. You therefore will believe me when I tell you how important my daughter's happiness is to me. And I can assure you that she found perfect happiness with Mr. Faulkner.
What did you know of Mr. Faulkner personally?
Well, it's only fair to admit that he had many qualities of which I could not approve. We are as unlike as two humans could be. I believe in one's duties to others above all. Bjorn Faulkner believed in nothing but himself.
So as far as your knowledge of him is concerned, would you consider it possible that he committed suicide?
I consider it absolutely impossible.
Thank you, Mr. Whitfield.
Mr. Whitfield, were you very fond of your son-in-law?
Yes,
You never disagreed with him or lost your temper?
Mr. Stevens, I do not lose my temper.
If my memory serves me right, there was some kind of trouble when you made that stupendous loan to Mr. Faulkner.
Purely a misunderstanding, I assure you. Oh, I must admit that Mr. Faulkner made somewhat an unethical attempt to hasten the loan, which was completely unnecessary, since I granted it gladly, for my daughter's sake.
You said that your fortune had been badly damaged by the Faulkner crash,
Yes,
and it is rather strained at the present.
yes.
Then how could you afford a $25,000 reward for the arrest and conviction of Larry Reagan?
Objection! What has that to do with the case?
Your Honor, I would like to explain this.
Very well.
I did offer such a reward. The gentleman commonly known as Larry Reagan is a notorious criminal who specializes in extorting money for so-called protection. He had not only menaced Mr. Faulkner, but he also threatened to kidnap my daughter. I offered the reward for evidence that would make his arrest and conviction possible.
Mr. Whitfield, can you tell us why you and your daughter disappeared so shortly after the night of January 16th?
Mr. Stevens, I think that answer is obvious. My daughter was crushed by the sudden tragedy. I hastened to take her away, to save her health.
You love your daughter profoundly,
Yes,
and you've always made it a point that her every wish be granted.
I can proudly say yes.
When she or you desire anything, you don't stop at the price, do you?
Well, Mr. Stevens, we never had to.
Then would you refuse to buy her the man she wanted?
Mr. Stevens,
Whitfield, perhaps you'll tell us that your money had nothing to do with Mr. Faulkner dismissing Miss Andre, that no ultimatum was delivered?
you are quite mistaken in your insinuation. My daughter was not the least bit jealous of Miss Andre.
I'd be careful of statements like that, Mr. Whitfield. Remember, your daughter was elevated to the high state of matrimony by purchase.
Objection! Daddy! Daddy!
Why, you incompetent little upstart but you do know that I could crush you like a worm, but I could crush many a better.
Thank you, Mr. Whitfield. That's just what I wanted to prove. That was all.
Your argument that the defense counsel's outrageous remarks which led to this incident be stricken out.
The remark may go out.
The people rest.
Your Honor, I ask the case be dismissed for lack of evidence.
Denied.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we cannot pass judgment on Miss Andre without passing it on to Bjorn Faulkner. He had put himself outside all human standards. Whether it was below them or above them is something we'll all have to decide personally. But remember this, he was the man who said he needed no reasons for his actions. He was the reason. The man who said the laws were for the weak, the strong were the laws. If you will remember that, then you will understand that the financial situation which he was thrown into his last months was so intolerable that he would resort to anything, including suicide. And that is what the defense will prove. My first witness will be Secure Junquist.
George Dunquist?
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Your name,
Sigurd Junquist.
your occupation,
The last job was secretary to Bjorn Faulkner.
and how long did you hold that job?
Since the beginning of November, since Miss Andre left.
And your position before that?
Bookkeeper for Faulkner.
And how long did you hold that job?
5 years.
Did Mr. Faulkner give you Miss Andre's job after she was dismissed?
Yes.
Did Miss Andre instruct you in your new duties?
Yes, she did.
What was her behavior at the time? Did she seem angry or resentful or sorry?
No, she was very calm, like always. Explained everything very clearly.
Did you notice any problems between Miss Andre and Mr. Faulkner at the time?
Herr Lawyer, there can be no problems between Miss Faulkner, Mr. Faulkner and Miss Andre between you and your shadow.
Now tell me, have you ever witnessed any business conferences between Mr. Whitfield and Mr. Faulkner?
I never been president of conferences, but Herr Whitfield, he at the office many times. Herr Whitfield, he not like Herr Faulkner.
Your Honor, if you please, I would like to report this incident, which I consider a hoax. A man has just called on the telephone and asked to speak to me. When informed it was impossible, he left the following message. Do not put Karen Andre on the stand until I get there. No signature.
Yes, is enough.
I'm going to go on the stand right away. May I ask why, Miss Andre? Mr. Stevens, question me now.
I'm sorry, Miss Andre. It's impossible until I finish the questioning with Mr. Junquist.
Then hurry. Who are you expecting?
You don't have to answer that, Miss Andre.
But in view of such strange behavior.
Silence. I shall ask the defendant to refrain from further interruptions. Have a seat, Miss Andre.
The ruling should apply to the district attorney.
Order! Another outbreak of this kind will find the defense counsel in contempt of court. Proceed with the examination, Mr. Stevens.
Before this interruption, you said Mr. Whitfield didn't like Faulkner. What made you say that?
I heard him say one day, Herr Faulkner, he was desperate for money. Herr Whitfield would say, very strange. What are you going to do if your business crashed? Herr Faulkner said, I'll commit suicide. Herr Whitfield would say, if you do, make sure you do a good job of it.
That was all. Thank you, Mr. Junquist.
Can we leave the stand? Unless the district attorney has any more questions,
Yes, I do.
then proceed.
Mr. Junquist, where were you employed before you started up with Mr. Faulkner?
I've worked in bank in Stockholm.
But you were not employed immediately preceding that job.
No,
Where were you at that time?
I was in prison.
So you were in jail. On what charge?
Embezzlement.
From your employer?
Yes.
You absconded from the bank in Sweden with 30,000 kroner, didn't you?
Yes. But Mr. Faulkner, he helped me to get out of prison. He gave me a chance to go straight.
Oh, he did. He gave you a chance to go straight so you could help him go crooked. You've been employed by him for 5 years, haven't you?
Yes.
during that time weren't several transactions made that were illegal?
Yes.
Did you know at that time that he was crooked?
No, I did not.
And do you now know that he was a swindler?
No, I do not know that.
You don't? What do you suppose all those brilliant financial transactions of his were?
Frau Lawyer, when a person like me and you meet someone like Bjorn Faulkner, we take our hats off. We bow down, take orders, but we do not ask questions.
Your devotion to your master is worthy of admiration. You would do anything for him, wouldn't you?
Yes.
What about Miss Andre? Are you just as devoted to her?
Miss Andre served there, Faulkner.
Then such a little matter as a few lies for the sake of your master would mean nothing to you.
I have not lied, Frau Lawyer. Bjorn Faulkner is dead and cannot tell me to lie. But if I had a choice, I'd lie for him rather than tell the truth for you.
For which statement I am more grateful than you can guess, Mr. Junquist. That is all.
You may now leave the stand, Mr. Junquist.
Karen Andre.
Karen, Andre? Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
That's useless. I'm an atheist.
The witness has to affirm regardless.
I affirm.
Your name,
Karen Andre,
your last position.
secretary to Bjorn Faulkner.
Tell us about your first meeting.
I met him for the first time in his office in Stockholm. He was alone, and I had come in answer to an advertisement for a stenographer. It was my first job.
How did Mr. Faulkner greet you?
He stood up and didn't say a word. He just stared at me. No one can stand his gaze for very long. So I just told him why I'd come.
Did he engage you then?
No, he said I was too young and that he didn't like me. But he threw a stenographer's pad at me anyway and said, "Get down to work. I'm in a hurry." So I did.
And you worked all day?
All day. He dictated as fast, even faster than he could talk. He didn't let me say a word. He always had his eyes on me. It was as if he was trying to crack a whip over an animal he wanted to break.
What happened when you had finished?
When we had finished, I told him I was quitting. He didn't say a word. He just stared at me. I picked up my things and I started out. He tapped on his desk, so I stopped. He said, "In my office at 9. I didn't say a word. I just left. That night, I could hardly sleep. His eyes were always on me. The next morning, I was in his office at 9.
And you worked and planned and rose to success together.
Yes.
Can you tell us the extent of Mr. Faulkner's fortune at the height of his success?
Bjorn had no personal fortune. He said the world belonged to him that could use it. He took what he wanted. When he owed money to one of his corporations, he crossed it off the books, and he charged the account to several other concerns. And thus he balanced his books. It was quite simple.
Why did a man of Mr. Faulkner's genius resort to such a method?
Bjorn wanted to build a gigantic net over the whole world, and as fast as he could in his lifetime.
When did his business difficulties start?
Over a year ago.
Tell us about it.
Well, all of his corporations started needing money around the same time. So he couldn't charge the accounts to any other concern without one of them going into bankruptcy. And it would show the weakness of our financial position.
What did you do?
A certain $25 million loan was necessary. We went to the Whitfield Investment Corporation, but Mr. Whitfield, he refused. That's when his daughter came into the picture.
How did that happen, Miss Andre?
Bjorn met her at a party. She soon made it very obvious that she wanted to get acquainted. So Bjorn kept up the acquaintance, for diplomatic reasons. Then one day Bjorn came to me. I've never seen you pale before. And he said, "Karen, we only have one piece of collateral left, and you're holding it. I'll need to borrow it for a while." I said, "Certainly, what is it?" He said it was himself. I asked for Nancy Whitfield. He didn't say a word, he just nodded. I didn't answer at once. It wasn't really easy. And then I said, "All right, Bjorn."
Had Mr. Faulkner proposed to Miss Whitfield?
No, she had proposed to him.
How do you know that?
He told me. They had gone driving out on a lonely road. She stopped the car, turned to him point blank and said, "I want you and you know it, and you don't want me and I know that, but I've got the price." And he asked him, "What is that?" She said, "A certain $25 million loan that'll save your business."
It's a lie! It's a shameless lie!
Anyone disturbing the proceedings of this court will be asked to leave.
What was Mr. Faulkner's answer to this question, Miss Andre?
He told her that was an awful lot of money. She said money meant nothing to her. He told her to remember that this was always a business deal. She said, I'll have you and you'll have your money, and such was the bargain.
Was Mr. Whitfield eager to accept this bargain, Miss Andre?
Bjorn thought Mr. Whitfield would have a stroke, but Miss Whitfield insisted. She always gets what she wants.
In other words, Mr. Faulkner sold himself as his last security.
Yes.
Did you resent that marriage?
No. We'd always faced our business as a war, and when any war comes to a crisis, someone has to be sacrificed. My time for sacrifice had come, but it was harder for him than it was for me.
Then why did Mr. Faulkner dismiss you 2 weeks after his wedding?
I had to be discharged because Mr. Whitfield refused to advance any money until I was gone.
What reason did he offer?
It was Miss Whitfield's ultimatum. I had to leave.
Did Mr. Whitfield grant the loan after you were dismissed?
No, Bjorn took it
How did he take it?
by forging Mr. Whitfield's signatures to $25 million worth of securities.
How do you know that?
I helped him do it.
Did this $25 million help Mr. Faulkner?
Only temporarily. He had stretched his credit to the utmost, and there was no more to be had.
How did Mr. Faulkner take this situation?
He knew it was the end.
And what was his plans?
You don't find men like Bjorn Faulkner cringing before bankruptcy commission, and you don't find them locked in jail.
And the alternative?
Bjorn wasn't afraid of the world. He had come into it as its master, and he was going to leave it when and how he pleased. He was a man that...
Here, stop! I told you to wait for me.
Where's Reagan? Larry, you promised to stay away.
What is the meaning of this?
You don't understand.
Your Honor, I demand this man may not be allowed to testify. Why, Miss Andre?
Silence! I'll order my courtroom.
Mister, that's the man I see kiss Miss Andre.
Admit him.
Your Honor, you can't believe a word he says. He loves me. He'll do anything to save me. He'll lie. Don't believe him.
Karen, your sacrifice is useless.
What do you mean?
Faulkner is dead.
Dead?
You're on trial for his murder. Did you know he was dead?
No, she didn't know. When she was arrested for Faulkner's murder, he was still alive.
But he is alive.
No, Karen.
He is. He's alive. He's waiting for me. You're lying to me, Larry. He's alive. He's waiting for me.
Court attention. Superior Court number 11 is State New York, trial with Judge Jacqueline Heath presiding.
The people of the state of New York versus Karen Andre.
Ready, Your Honor.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like to report that I have issued a warrant for the arrest of Larry Reagan, as he is obviously an accomplice to this murder. But he has disappeared. He was last seen with the defense counsel, and I would like to tell you...
Keep your shirt on. What do you think I'm here for? Just you guys grill? You don't have to issue any warrant. I'll stay here. If she's guilty, I'm guilty.
The defense may proceed.
Karen Andre. Miss Andre, when you took this stand yesterday, did you know the whole truth about this case?
No.
And in view of certain circumstances which have arisen, do you wish to retract any of your testimony?
No.
When you first took the stand, did you intend to shield anyone?
Yes, I did.
Whom?
Bjorn Faulkner.
Do you still find it necessary to protect him?
No. It's not necessary anymore.
Do you still claim that Bjorn Faulkner committed suicide?
No. He did not commit suicide. He was killed. But I didn't kill him. You have to believe me. Not for my sake. I don't care what you do with me now, but because his murder cannot go unpunished. I'll tell you the whole truth. I've lied at the inquest. I lied to my attorney. I was going to lie here, but everything I've told you so far has been the truth. Now I'll tell you the rest.
When you court adjourned yesterday, you were about to tell us about Mr. Faulkner's way out of his difficulties.
I said he was going to leave this world when and how he pleased, but I didn't mean by killing himself. I did push a body off the penthouse, but that body was already dead. It was not Bjorn Faulkner's.
Please explain this to us, Miss Andre.
Bjorn wanted to be found dead. So he decided to stage a suicide and then disappear. I was to go with him. He had this idea for a long time, so he kept $10 million out of the loan that Mr. Whitfield gave us. We needed someone else, someone who was no way connected with Bjorn. We only knew of one such person, Larry Reagan.
Why did you believe that Larry would help you in such a dangerous undertaking?
Because he loved me.
And he did it in spite of that fact?
He did it because of that.
What was the plan, Miss Andre?
Larry was to get the corpse. On the night of January 16th, Lefty O'Toole, a gunman, was shot by rival gangsters. Larry stole that body. Lefty's height and his measurements, his hair, everything was the same as Bjorn's. That's the body I pushed off the penthouse.
What was the plan, Miss Andre?
Well, Larry used to be an air pilot. He was to get the plane and he was to fly Bjorn to South America. On the day of January 16th, Bjorn took the 10 millions and transferred them into 3 different banks in Buenos Aires under the assumed name of Flagler Hayden. I was to meet him a month later in the Hotel Continental in Buenos Aires. We were not to communicate for 3 months. We weren't allowed to let the secret be revealed.
Tell us what happened on the day of January 16th, Miss Andre.
Bjorn came to my place. I'll never forget his smile when he stepped off the elevator. He loved danger. We had dinner, and then we drove to Larry's. Larry had the body dressed in traveler's clothes, a gray overcoat and a hat. Then the 3 of us went back to my place with the body. Bjorn wanted to be seen coming into the building, so I didn't use my key. I rang the bell. We were all dressed formally to make it look like we had just come from a party. Bjorn and Larry supported the body to make it look like a drunken friend. And then the night watchman's wife came and opened the door for us, and we went up in the elevator.
And then what happened?
Bjorn exchanged clothes with the body. We had a couple of drinks, and then Bjorn and Larry took the body out to the parapet. And then we said goodbye. Bjorn left a few minutes later. He went down in the elevator. I watched the needle of the indicator going down, and then it stopped. He was gone.
And then?
Larry left a few minutes later. They were to meet 10 miles out of the city, where Larry had left his plane. I was to wait an hour. The penthouse was silent, and I didn't want to wait out in the garden with the body. So I went to my room and laid on my bed. There was a clock next to the bed ticking in the darkness. I waited. An hour passed, and I got up. I tore my dress to make it look like a struggle. And then I walked out to the garden. I looked down, and the world seemed so far away. And then I picked up the gun. I shot it in the air to make it so if anyone had any questions about the gun wound. I guess I was kind of nervous. I forgot about the fingerprints. I put the gun down and I pushed the body over the penthouse. I thought all of Bjorn's troubles went with it. I didn't know his life went with it too.
That is all, Miss Andre.
Miss Andre, you say that you lied at the inquest.
Yes.
And you lied to your attorney.
Yes.
And the story you've told us here is entirely different from the one you came to court prepared to tell.
It is. Why should we believe a word of it? How are we to know when you are lying and when you're telling the truth?
We object, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Didn't Mr. Faulkner have a clear conception of the difference between right and wrong?
Bjorn, he never thought of things as right or wrong. It was either he can or he can't.
What about
He
you?
always could.
What about you? Didn't you object to helping him in all of his swindles?
For me, it was only he wants or he doesn't.
You loved Bjorn Faulkner,
Yes,
such as he was.
because he was such as he was.
Exactly, Miss Andre. And what would you do if a woman were to take away the man you worship so insanely? If she were to take away the ruthless brute you loved and change him into her own ideal of an upright man, would you still love him?
Your Honor, we object.
That objection sustained.
I want to answer this question. I want Miss Flint to know that she is insulting Bjorn Faulkner's memory.
You do? You thought nothing of insulting him while he was alive by dividing your love with a gangster.
You lousy...
Larry, stop! Larry loved me. I didn't love him.
And he didn't demand your love for his help.
He demanded nothing.
And you didn't ask him to help you take revenge upon your first lover.
No.
Why so particular, Miss Andre? Is there much difference between a swindler and a gangster?
We object.
Sustained.
You are the only one who knew of all Bjorn Faulkner's swindling activities.
Yes.
You could send him to jail at any time.
I would never do that.
But you could, if you wanted to.
I suppose so.
Isn't that the explanation of Faulkner's visits to you after his marriage? He wanted to reform, to avoid a crash. But you held it over his head. You could expose him and ruin him, and before he made good for his crimes. Which was it that held him in your arms? Love or fear?
Bjorn never knew the meaning of the word fear.
Who knew about that transfer of $10 million to Buenos Aires, Miss Andre?
Bjorn, Larry, and myself.
Not just you and Reagan alone, with your knowledge of his business and ability to forge his signature, could not you and Reagan alone have made that transfer?
That would not have been necessary. Bjorn would have given it to me if I would have asked.
Bjorn Faulkner kept you in extravagant luxury.
Yes.
You hated to see him lose his money to his investors, to change your mode of living, to see him poor.
No one was to ever see him poor.
No, of course not, because you and your gangster lover were going to get the $10 million no one knew about.
Your Honor, we object.
That's sustained.
You've heard it testified that Mr. Faulkner had no real reason to commit suicide, that he had found his first happiness with Miss Whitfield, and you hated him for that happiness, didn't you?
You don't understand Bjorn Faulkner.
Maybe I don't understand him, but let's see if I understand you. You formed a partnership with a swindler. With him, you defrauded thousands of investors the world over. You cultivated a friendship with a gangster. You were involved in a $25 million forgery. You tell us this in all defiance of the sense of the word honesty. And you expect us to believe you not capable of murder?
You're wrong, Miss Flint. I am capable of murder, for Bjorn Faulkner's sake.
Thank you, Miss Andre.
Relieve the stand.
Lawrence Reagan.
Lawrence Reagan.
Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Your name
Lawrence Reagan,
and your occupation.
unemployed.
How long have you known Karen Andre?
5 months.
Where did you meet her?
In Faulkner's office. I went to do some business with him. I gave up that business when I met his secretary.
How did you happen to become friendly with Miss Andre?
First meeting wasn't exactly friendly. She wouldn't let me in to see Mr. Faulkner. She said I had enough money to buy orchids by the pound and that I had no business with her boss. I said I'd think it over and went. I thought it over, only I didn't think of the business. I thought of her. The next day I sent her a pound of orchids. That's how it started.
Did you know Miss Andre loved Faulkner?
What of it? I knew it was hopeless for me, but I couldn't help it.
And you never demanded her love in return?
You have to know all that.
I'm afraid we do.
I kissed her once, by force. It was the night of Faulkner's wedding. She was alone, so unhappy. I didn't want her to know but she knew. She told me it was no use. We've never mentioned it since.
When did Miss Andre tell you for the first time that there were plans to go to South America?
About 2 weeks before he pulled it.
Was Lucky O'Toole one of your men?
No.
And did you have any part in his planned murder?
No, I'm sorry.
You actually had no definite knowledge of his planned death?
No, I just had a way of guessing.
What happened on the night of January 16th?
It all worked out as Miss Andre has told you, but she only knows half the story. I know the rest.
Tell us what happened after you left the penthouse.
I left 10 minutes after Faulkner. He had taken my car to cover up his identity. I had one of my men leave another car for me at the door, and I stepped on it full speed.
Where did you go?
To Meadow Lane, 10 miles out in Kings County. I had left my plane there earlier in the evening. Faulkner was to get there first and wait for me. We were to leave at once for South America.
And about what time did you get there?
About midnight. There was a bright moon, I remember. I turned off the road, and I could see tire tracks in the mud where Faulkner's car had passed. I drove out into the lane. Then I thought I'd lose my mind. The plane was gone.
What did you do?
I searched for that plane for 2 hours. Faulkner's car was there where we'd agreed to hide it, but it was empty. Lights turned off and the keys in the switch. I saw tracks on the ground where the plane had taken off, but Faulkner wasn't the pilot. He couldn't fly the plane himself.
Were there any clues to this mystery?
Yes, one. A car I found hidden in the brush.
What type of a car?
A big black sedan.
And then what did you do?
I wanted to know whose car it was, so I crawled in the back seat and settled down to wait.
And how long did you have to wait?
The rest of that night.
And then?
Then the owner came back. I saw him coming. His face looked queer. He had no hat, and his clothes were wrinkled and grease-spotted.
What did you do?
Oh, I pretended I was asleep in the back seat. I saw him coming. I watched him. He approached the car, opened the door, then he saw me. He gave a start as if he'd been struck.
Then what did you do?
I awakened, stretched, rubbed my eyes, and said, "Oh, it's you." He said, "Who are you?" I said, "My name's Larry Reagan. You may have heard it. I was in a little trouble and had to hide out for a while, and finding this car here was quite a convenience." He said, "That's too bad, but I'll have to ask you to get out. I'm in a hurry."
Did you get out?
No. I stretched again and asked, "What's the hurry?" He said, "None of your business." I smiled and said I'd like to have the whole story.
What did he say?
At first he said nothing. He took out a checkbook and looked at me. I shrugged and looked at him. Then he said, "Would $5,000 be enough?" I said, "It'll do. Lawrence Reagan's the name." He wrote out the check. Here it is.
I have this check in evidence.
What is this nonsense? Who is the man?
I'll have the check read it to you.
Paid to the order of Lawrence Reagan for the sum of $5,000. Signed John Graham Whitfield.
Why, this is an outrage!
I demand to see that check. Objection.
May I see the check, please? Overruled, admitted in evidence.
What did you do after you received the check, Mr. Reagan?
I drew my gun and stuck it in his ribs and said, "Now, you lousy cur, what did you do with Faulkner?"
Your Honor, is this man allowed to make such statements?
The witness is allowed to testify. If it is proven to be perjury, he will suffer the consequences. Proceed, Mr. Stevens.
What did he answer?
At first he muttered, "I don't know what you're talking about." But I jammed the gun harder and said, I've no time to waste. Where did you take it?"
Did you get anything out of him?
Not a word. I talked and threatened, but it was no use. I let him go. I knew I could always get him. I didn't want to kill him yet.
Then did you try to find Mr. Faulkner?
I didn't lose a second. I rushed home, jumped into some flying clothes, grabbed another plane, and flew to Buenos Aires. I searched. I advertised in the papers, but got no answer. Nobody called at the banks for the 10 millions we transferred under the name of Ragnar Hayden.
Did you try to communicate with Miss Andre in any way?
No, we had promised to stay away from each other for a month, and she had been arrested for Faulkner's murder. I laughed when I read that, but I couldn't say a word, not to betray Faulkner if he were still alive.
What were you waiting for?
For the month passed, February 16th. I went to the Hotel Continental in Buenos Aires, and I set my teeth and waited every minute of every hour of that last day. He didn't come.
Then?
Then I knew he was dead. I came back to New York. I started to search for my plane. We found it yesterday.
Where did you find it?
In a deserted valley in New Jersey, 20 miles from Meadow Lane. I recognized the plane by the engine number. It had been landed and fire set to it.
Was the plane empty?
No, I found a body of a man in it.
Could you identify the body?
No one could. It was nothing but a burned skeleton, but the height was the same. It was Faulkner. I examined the body, or what was left of it. I found 2 bullet wounds in the bones, one through the right hand, the other over the heart. He must have been disarmed first, shot through the hand, then murdered, defenseless, straight through the heart.
That's all, Mr. Reagan. You're a witness.
Just what is your business, Mr. Reagan?
I've refused that information to others. It would seem so partial if I told them on you.
What do you do when prospective clients refuse to pay you protection money?
I'm legally allowed not to understand what you're talking about.
Then I will try to make it clear. May I question you as to whether you read the newspapers?
You may.
Well?
Question me.
You kindly state as to whether or not you read the newspapers.
Occasionally.
And did you happen to read when James Sutton Vance Jr. refused to pay protection to a certain gangster, his magnificent home in Westchester was nearly destroyed by an explosion minutes after the guests of a party left, nearly missing a wholesale slaughter? What was that? A coincidence?
A remarkable coincidence, Miss Flint, just after the guests left.
And did you happen to read that when Mr. Van Dorn was in the paper, that he also...
We object, Your Honor. This is stupid.
Sustained.
We'll see. So you had no ill feeling toward the failure of your business with Mr. Faulkner?
No.
What would you do if a man were to merely toss aside the woman you loved because he had found someone else with more money?
I'd cut his throat with a dull saw.
You would?
I would.
And yet you expect us to believe that you, Larry Reagan, outlaw, gangster, scum of the underworld, would merely step aside with a grand gesture and throw this woman back into the arms of the same man?
Your Honor,
I loved her.
Then why did you let her visit him after the marriage?
Just a rare privilege.
You two were holding a blackmail plot over his head?
Got any proof of that?
Her association with you is the best proof of that.
Objection.
Sustained.
How did you kill Faulkner in the penthouse on that night?
Objection.
Sustained.
You deny having any part in the murder of Bjorn Faulkner in the penthouse on that night.
I do.
You deny being an accomplice to that murder.
I do.
Yet you admit of the plot, which Miss Andre has just described to us.
I do.
To what extent did you participate?
Miss Flint, I merely provided the corpse.
Nothing else?
Nothing else.
Exhibit B. Do you recognize this gun?
No.
Let me remind you that that is the gun that was found in the penthouse on the night of Bjorn Faulkner's death. The gun Miss Andre has shot and she claims was hers. Now do you recognize it?
No.
Affidavit, please. I have here an affidavit which states that the purchase of this gun was made in a New Jersey gun store by one Lawrence Reagan and encloses the number CC3490 as a serial number.
Just a minute, Miss Flint. I would like to see that affidavit, please.
There's no CC3490 on this gun, Miss District Attorney.
Have you ever heard of the heat test?
No.
The serial number on this gun has been filed off, but when heated red hot, it discloses the serial number, CC3490.
This is satisfactory, Miss Flint.
accepted Exhibit F?
You admit being in the pit house on the night of January 16th.
I do.
Where was your accomplice, the man who played the part of the drunk?
Lefty O'Toole? I can give you his exact address. Evergreen Cemetery, Whitfield Family Memorial, which is the swankiest place poor Lefty's ever been.
Let me get this clear. You claim that Lefty O'Toole is buried in the Whitfield Memorial?
Yes, in the same body that was thrown from the penthouse.
And the body that was in the plane that was burned is Bjorn?
Yes.
Who's to say that it isn't the other way around? Supposing that the bodies were switched and Lefty's body was burned. Who's to say that you didn't come up with this plot yourself in an attempt to save Miss Andre? You've heard her testify that you'll lie for her, murder for her.
We object, Your Honor.
Objection sustained.
Just where is your real proof, Mr. Reagan?
Miss Flint, you're a district attorney, and you know what I am. We both have a lot of dirty work to do. Such happens to be life, or most of it. But do you think we're both so low that if something passes us to which one kneels, we no longer have eyes to see it? I loved her. She loved Faulkner. That's our only proof.
That's all, Mr. Reagan.
The defense rests.
Any witnesses in rebuttal?
Yes, we call her Roberta Van Rensselaer.
Roberta Van Rensselaer.
You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Certainly. Why not? Will you kindly state your name? Real or professional? Both, if you don't mind.
I don't mind. My real name is Ruby O'Toole, but my friends don't call me Ruby. I hate that name.
But professionally known as Roberta Van Rensselaer.
That's my nom de plume. I'm a terpsichorean.
You mean you dance?
That's a common name for it.
Where were you last employed?
At the club Chez O'Toole. No cover charge.
Who was your employer?
The owner, George Lefty O'Toole.
Were you related to him?
No, I was his wife.
Did you know of Larry Reagan?
I've met the rat.
I take it you haven't much affection for him.
Well, let's look at it this way. If we were cast off together on a lonely island, it would still be lonely.
Why do you dislike him?
Because he killed Lefty O'Toole.
We object, Your Honor.
Strike it out.
Miss Van Rensselaer, you must forego your personal opinions and stick to your knowledge of the facts in this case. Did O'Toole and Reagan do business together?
No. If Lefty had stooped that low, he would have broke his back.
Would you have considered them rivals?
Larry might say so, but Lefty just considered him an amusement, like golf or fishing.
When did you see Reagan last?
See him or hear from him?
See him.
About a month before Lefty was rubbed out. Reagan came over to the club one night and wanted to talk to Lefty, and Lefty had me sit at the table and listen. He always had me do that because Reagan had been trying to muscle in.
What did he want that night?
He said he wanted to sell out.
Did that surprise you?
You could have carried me out in a spoon.
Was O'Toole interested in that proposition?
No. He said Larry didn't sit long enough in one place to get a shine on his pants.
Why did he want to sell out?
His story was that he's leaving the country for good. He described some Jane he had on the run and a lot of important money she's going to have and how they're going to South America to put the equator between them and the income tax boys.
Did he mention who that woman was?
No, but Lefty knew. He said it was some Jane working in Faulkner's office, but it wouldn't do him any good because Faulkner would stop him.
And what did Reagan say to that?
He said Faulkner was going away for good. And Lefty says, "You planning to erase him?" And Reagan says, "No, he's going to commit a fake suicide. But won't he be surprised when he finds out it's real?"
Objection, Your Honor. This is hearsay and not admissible.
Overruled.
Do you recall the rest of that conversation?
They talked about a price for Larry's interest, and Lefty said he'd think it over.
Did you hear from him again?
Yes, on January 16th. Reagan phoned the club one night and wanted to talk to Lefty. I put Lefty on the phone, and after they talked, he said he was going to Sands Point to meet Reagan and finish the deal.
And he left the house that night to meet Reagan.
Yes, to go to Long Island. He was put on the spot at the Queensboro Bridge.
And he was killed that same night.
Yes, and an hour later, his body disappeared.
Thank you. Your witness.
You are the widow of George O'Toole,
Yes,
and you admit that you hate Lawrence Reagan?
I swear to it.
Haven't you allowed that fact to influence your testimony?
How do you mean?
I mean, you're here to get revenge on Larry Reagan. You relate things which you know nothing about. For instance, you said that Larry Reagan was low on money.
We kept better books for Reagan than he kept for the government.
You said your husband met his death on January 16th,
Yes,
and it was rumored that it was put on the spot by rival gangsters.
it couldn't possibly have been anyone
Let's
else.
keep the questions that are put upon you. You believe he was killed by a rival.
Yes, and the man who did it was...
But did you consider Reagan a rival?
You don't have to consider a skunk your rival just because you try to keep him off your farm.
That is all, Miss Van Winslow.
Killing Lefty O'Toole was the dirtiest trick.
That is all.
It was dirty, Judge.
Very well. Any more witnesses?
Your Honor, I'd like to recall John Graham Whitfield.
Very well.
Mr. Whitfield, have you any objections if I ask the court to have an examination of the body in Evergreen Cemetery?
I have no objection, Mr. Stevens, but the body has been cremated.
Cremated? Why was that done, Mr. Whitfield?
Well, the body was in such condition, I felt it the best possible thing to do.
And for no other reason than that?
Well, it has been a tradition in our family for a number of years.
Mr. Whitfield, where were you on the night of January 16th?
I was at home.
Do you have any witnesses to this?
Mr. Stevens, you must realize that I am not in the habit of providing myself with alibis. I've never had reason to keep track of my activities or to produce witnesses for them. But if you insist, I believe I spoke to my daughter.
How many cars do you own, Mr. Whitfield?
4.
What are they?
One of them is a black sedan, as you're obviously anxious to learn. But I may remind you, it's not the only black sedan in New York City.
You said you have just returned by plane from California?
Yes.
And you flew it yourself?
Yes.
Then you are a licensed pilot.
I am.
And yet the story of Mr. Reagan about you running off with his plane and killing Mr. Faulkner in New Jersey is nothing but a lie in your opinion?
It most certainly is.
And who wrote that check for $5,000?
I did.
You admit it?
Yes.
Explain yourself.
We all know Larry Reagan's profession. He had threatened my daughter. I preferred to buy him off than to risk the life of my child. So on January 6th, I wrote him a check for $5,000.
You mean January 16th?
No, January 6th. Mr. Reagan has obviously added a 1 on it to make it the 16th.
You mean he changed the date?
You may call the handwriting expert to find out.
Kindly refrain from advising me. Now you said your fortune and your daughter are your most prized possessions, aren't they?
They are.
Then what would you do to the man who took off with your money and deserted your daughter for another woman?
We object, Your Honor.
Objection sustained.
You hated Faulkner. You wanted to break him. You suspected his intentions of staging a fake suicide. Then...
I assure you, Mr. Stevens, I suspected nothing of the kind.
And on January 16th, you didn't follow Mr. Faulkner?
No.
You didn't follow him as soon as he left the penthouse?
Certainly not.
You didn't have any information about the $10 million that was transferred?
No,
You heard nothing unusual that day.
nothing.
I did it. I killed Bjorn Faulkner, and I helped that man to do it. I didn't know. I'm telling the truth, so help me God. I know, but I see now. He killed Faulkner because he lied. He knew about the $10 million because I told him.
You can't just come into this courtroom and just take control.
That is all, Mr. Whitfield.
You may take a stand, Mr.
No
Whitfield.
questions.
Come on, take a stand, Mr. Junquist. You told Mr. Whitfield about that transfer?
Whitfield asked me many times about the $10 million, where it's spent. That day, I told him about Buenos Aires. That day, at noon, January 16th.
You told Mr. Whitfield at noon?
Yes. So help me God. I'd give my life for him. And I hope to kill him.
That's all.
Mr. Junquist, were you alone with Mr. Whitfield when you told him?
Yes.
So it's the word of an ex-convict against Mr. John Grant Whitfield.
Yes.
That's all.
The bailiff will escort Mr. Junquist out of the courtroom. The defense may proceed with the closing arguments.
Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, in a few moments, you will be called upon to decide the fate of a woman. Her very life rests in your hands, and I am here to plead for that life. Karen Andre has confessed to you here many questionable things that may arouse you against her, but she's not being tried for those things, only for the murder of Bjorn Faulkner. And to hold her guilty of that, you must convince yourselves of two things. One, that there was a motive. And two, the evidence clearly states that she committed this crime. Now about the evidence. What direct evidence has been submitted to you? Merely that she pushed the body from the penthouse. We admit that, but we deny it was the body of Bjorn Faulkner. And the motive? In business, the lives of Karen Andre and Bjorn Faulkner were one. Think of Bjorn Faulkner. The state says that he has reformed, that he had become a devoted husband, and that he had dedicated his life to saving his unfortunate investors. But after his marriage, he did not take his wife into his confidence, and he did not explain his absence night after night. Was that the act of a devoted husband? On January 16th, he absconded with $10 million. Was that the act of a man trying to save his investors? And to whom was he to meet in South America? His wife? No, Karen Andre. And to whom did he confide all of his other plans? His wife? No, Karen Andre. We admit Karen Andre helped Faulkner in his swindles. We admit that she lied at the inquest. But none of these things make her a murderess. Remember this, Karen Andre loved Bjorn Faulkner. That is her only defense. Who is on trial in this case? Karen Andre? No, it is you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, who are on trial. It's your souls and your minds, in the very deepest secret chords of your heart, that will be brought to light when you render your decision and ask for the verdict of not guilty.
The district attorney may now conclude the case.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to appeal to your souls or to the deep chords of your heart, but to your reason alone. I have no need for your sympathies. The only things that concern you in this case are the facts. And bear that in mind as I enumerate them to you. That these are not manufactured alibis, but facts. On the night of January 16th, Bjorn Faulkner was killed. He was murdered. His body was thrown over the parapet of his penthouse by Miss Karen Andre. And a nearby detective was a witness to that, and that is a fact. He was already dead. He was shot in that penthouse. And the recently discharged weapon was discovered by the police. The weapon contained bore the fingerprints of Karen Andre and Karen Andre only. And that is another fact. The weapon was owned by one Larry Reagan, whom she claims she had never seen before, but who was in the penthouse that night with her. The housekeeper bore testimony that Larry Reagan and she were lovers, and together they conspired to send $10 million to South America. Now, where did they get such a sum of money? By forging the name John Graham Whitfield. that is a fact which Miss Andre herself has admitted on the stand. But why go to all this trouble? Why bother? Child will give you the answer. Karen Andre hated Bjorn Faulkner because he had married another woman and then dismissed her as his secretary. She was going to accomplish two things. First of all, she was going to avenge herself on Faulkner. And second, she was going to escape with $10 million to Buenos Aires and thus ensure herself of the depraved luxury to which she had become accustomed to. She planned all this with whom? Larry Reagan, her new lover. And so together, they concocted this diabolically clever alibi, this confusion of corpses, this cock and bull story, the sheer impudence of which almost carried it to a success. On the night of January 16, Lefty O'Toole was lured from his home in answer to a telephone call from Larry Reagan. On the night of January 16, $10 million shipped to South America. On the night of January 16, Bjorn Faulkner was killed and his body hurled to the sidewalks to thus conceal the bullet wound and make identification of the body difficult. On January 16th, the body of Lefty O'Toole was stolen from the cemetery and taken in an airplane to New Jersey. There, the plane and the body were burned. Finally, a check was taken from Mr. John Graham Whitfield by blackmail in the ridiculous attempt to implicate him in this case. These are the facts in this case. A case so strong, I can conceive of no other verdict than the one I ask you to offer me in return. Murder in the first degree.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the bailiff will now escort you to the jury room where you will vote upon your verdict. I shall ask you to adhere strictly to the evidence, omitting all personal prejudices and sympathies. I shall ask you to bear in mind the gun, fingerprints on it, the admitted forgeries, and the motives which may have caused this crime to be committed. You are to determine only whether Karen Andre is guilty or not guilty of the murder of Bjorn Faulkner. You may bring in a verdict of acquittal or of murder in the first degree. Can you now escort them out?
Attention to the court. Will the prisoner please face the jury? The jury please leave the prisoner. This court agrees to verdict.
Yes, we have.
What say you?
Not guilty.
The prisoner is discharged, but I see no reason to thank this jury for a verdict which, in my opinion, is contrary to the evidence. I shall order that the names of these jurors be stricken from the jury rolls for 5 years. This court stands adjourned.